So with that, I'd like to introduce my first speaker this morning, and that is none other than the creative director of Coldwood Interactive, the man who made Yarny, the red yarn character, so simple and yet so powerful, which is sort of the face of this exhibition. He pops up in various places. Martin Sahlin, all the way from Umeå, welcome.
Tacka.
Please tell us the story of Unravel and Yarny.
Yes, right, good morning. What do I click? It feels a bit, I feel like the old relative at the family gathering who just keeps telling the same story over and over. Stop me if you've heard this before. But then I think that now that the game has literally been in a museum, maybe it's okay to be a little bit nostalgic about the creation process. Which one? Is it this one? My name is Martin, and I'm the creative director at Coldwood. And we made Unravel. But the funny thing about that is people often think that it's the first game we made, but we actually made a lot of games before that. We spent 10 years making games, like smaller sports games and stuff like that. But just not that many people noticed before we made Unravel. And there's also, I'm like, who is it, Cato, who always says that Carthage should be destroyed. I always bring this up in every talk. This talk is not about crunch, but I always have to make it a point to mention that something that we did a lot was work a lot. And you should always work sensibly and not try to kill yourself creating stuff. And the biggest hit we had before Unravel, because I have to start with some kind of a background to just explain how Unravel became the game that it was. It's a fighting game that we did together with Sony. I designed it, they published it, and we created it under absolutely insane amounts of stress. If I tell you how long we spent on making it, you wouldn't believe me, because it shouldn't be possible. And it was terrible in a lot of ways, and I was extremely disappointed with it. But even though it wasn't very good, it did really well. It was actually kind of a huge success, by far the biggest thing we had ever created. And naturally, as a creator, I was really upset with this. I was super disappointed because, for a lot of reasons, but most of all, it struck me just how huge games are, because this thing that I'd made, even though it didn't turn out anything like it was supposed to be, anything close to what I originally imagined, it still reached like several 100,000 people. And for a game, that's small, actually. But it's still like, if you consider the amount of people in the world who get the chance to speak to several 100,000 people. And also, games have this very unique ability to just kind of immerse you, and then they really like absorb your attention, and you are completely committed to this experience to the point where you sometimes forget that there even is something other than the game. It alters your perception of time and the universe. You're like totally into this. And I was just thinking about like how I had hundreds of thousands of people in that state and didn't have anything even remotely interesting to tell them. Like you have a whole city of people listening and you don't have anything to say, and nothing to give them. And the whole thing felt just like a huge waste of time. And time is the most valuable resource we have, and it is a finite resource. And when you're out of time, you're out of time. And I think it's perfectly okay to waste your own time, but it's not okay for me to waste your time. That would be kind of mean. And I'm just stealing some of your life, and you're not getting it back. So I have to give you something to earn your time. And as for my own time, I had a bit of a breakdown at that point because, as I mentioned, we worked extremely hard on that game. And I was just slaving away on something that I was not happy with. Like, I did not like what it was becoming. I did not like working on it, but I still had to work on it because we have to deliver. And I was just basically spending all of my hours of all of my days being miserable and creating something that felt like, instead of something to be happy and proud about, it was growing into a complete monster. And it just also meant spending time away from like my family and people that actually matter. Like, you work so hard to win the love and admiration of complete strangers, so you forget that you're actually hurting the people who really love you. And that was just like, when I finally realized that this is a weird way to live your life, doing something that you hate, and not being with nice people doing nice things, that feels such a waste. So this image is actually, like, my family did kind of a little intervention. In my photo album on my computer, this is called Not at Work, because that was like the first day that I hadn't been to work for a long time. We just went out to a place by the coast. A name I can't say because it sounds rude in English, but just spent a day there just hanging out and being people and doing actually important things instead of working. And from that day, I just completely changed my approach to how I do things, because I just realized that this sucks. I need to do something else. And at that point, I was really, really fed up with working with games, and I was about to quit. But luckily, I didn't have to, because we screwed up another project after that one, and then we all got fired. so that was a relief. I don't actually recommend being fired as a creative booster. It's probably not that good. I honestly think that creativity thrives in comfort and safety more than in terror and drama. But in this case, it felt like someone pushed me off a cliff, and I realized that I can fly. It's like, that for me at the time, it was exactly what I needed, because I felt like we'd been doing the wrong things in the wrong ways, and we just weren't having fun and creating stuff that we were actually proud of. So I figured that now that we're fired anyway, I can just try to do this one last thing and try to get everything right. So I was trying to write stuff, and this little song lyric popped up in my head.
You are away. My heart comes undone.
I don't have rights to this, by the way, so I'll talk over it so you don't get a copyright takedown.
In a ball of yarn.
And I just thought, that little thing popped up, and it sounded like a game character. So I draw that little sketch and just wrote a little one-pager of a game that was going to be about love and the bonds between people, and using yarn to symbolize that. And it would be this gentle and caring and sweet game where we made empathy into a core feature. And it was not going to be a time waster. It was going to be a game with a lot to say and with a lot of meaning, and a game that you could keep and cherish and remember, and something we could be proud of. And then I went on vacation, because we were fired and we were basically shutting down, and we had some vacation days left, and I figured, if I don't do this now, I'll never do it, because we're out. There's no company anymore. So I took off, and we went camping, me and my family, and I did not know if I would have a job to come back to after this vacation. And quite honestly, I didn't care either, because it's like, well, if it's gone, it's gone. Then I'll do something else, and I don't mind. But then I found out that this little idea, this little mini pitch that I made, had sparked a lot of interest. People were super into it. So I got a phone call saying, like, can you make a real pitch out of this? And I said, I'm on vacation, so no. But then after some haggling, we realized, oh, okay, I can give it 1 day because I think it's kind of cool. So, okay, you get 1 day. And that was the best work day I have ever had. I was in this absolutely gorgeous environment, and I was with people that I loved, and just the whole thing felt awesome. It didn't feel like work, it just felt like love put on paper. And I like to describe it, if you've read Harry Potter, when he drinks the liquid luck potion and he suddenly can't make a wrong decision, because whatever he does is just intuitively right, and everything is it just works. And it was one of those days where it felt like whatever I needed just kept falling into my hands. It was I didn't have like normal tools and stuff. I had an iPad, and then I was just scavenging, more or less. So when I made the original Yarny, which is in the exhibition, like the wire that I made the skeleton from, I peeled that off an old anchor wire to some boat that I found behind a shed in the woods, and made a little skeleton from that. And then I figured, okay, I'm going to need some yarn. And this is actually the most absurd part of this story, because it sounds made up, but it wasn't. But I came across this punk rock kid, like leather jacket, studs, and everything, who was knitting. He was camping out in a tent in the woods, and he was knitting, and I asked him, can I borrow some of your red yarn? And he asked me, yeah, sure, but what do you need it for? And I said, if you wait 2.5 years, you'll see. And it actually took 2.5 years from that day, more or less. So I don't know his name, but he's in the credits for the game as some punk rock kid. So that was quite absurd, and at that point it just felt like fate is smiling at you. It's kind of like universe is on your side, and then you feel like you can't do anything wrong at that point. And it was sweet. I was just playing around, messing around, and figuring out the gameplay as I was just playing with this doll in the forest. And as far as the creative process goes, this was kind of fun, kind of beautiful. And also, because I had my family around, I could just like show it to my kids, and I could instantly see that this is something. This is not just anything, this is something. And that's kind of cool. And then I came back, and people loved it and were really, really into it. And then we were all unfired again. So we were back at work, and we eventually signed up with EA to publish. It's a bit of a journey getting there, but I'm not going to go into that now because it's a different story. But now we just had the challenge of trying to realize this promise and try to take this idea that everyone loved and to make it into a game that they would love as well. And I really wanted to stick with this kind of intuitive approach, because this whole thing of basing it around playing and taking photos and stuff, it felt so right that I kind of wanted to stay in that same mindset. So we really try to make it look like those first pictures, like this whole photographic approach was kind of important to us. So we try to make it as a collage originally. So this is one of the very, very early scenes that we did. It's a little bit messy, and we kept refining it a little bit, but we kind of wanted to use our assets, like our reference assets, as pure as possible. Like normally when you create, when you do photogrammetry and stuff like that, you end up with like a 3D representation of the thing. But since we are a 2D game, we figured, like, can't we just use the photos sort of the way they are? Because we just felt like the closer we are to the source, the cooler it's going to be. So wherever possible, we did that. And this is a mock-up we did, because the thing about video games is that it can take a while until you get to a point where the game is actually playable, so you can see if it's cool. So this is something that we created so that just to create the sense that this is real, this is a proper game, and we get what it is. So like to create buy-in in the team, I guess. It sounds like such a business word, but you really want everyone to commit to what the game is and just understand it on a deeper level. And it's kind of cool because a lot of this actually wound up in the game pretty much exactly as it is here. Obviously, it takes a lot of work to do something like this as well, but at least it doesn't take like a full year like making a advanced yarn simulation can do. So how many has actually played the game? So then you probably recognize a lot of these things. We changed some things around, but it's basically the same. Victory jump. And one of my favorite parts of this whole development process was the field trips, because we decided, again, like considering how the game started out and where it started out, that this is definitely the track that we're going to stay on. We're going to base this game in our home, in environments that mean a lot to us. This picture is actually from the same place that I can't say out loud because it sounds rude in English. But I figured that was like such a moment for me personally, so I have to put it in the game because we have to just, use places that mean something to us. Because, I don't know, that in some ways I think people will just see that these things have meaning. Even if we don't know what the meaning is, we can sense that it's there and you can still appreciate it. And we had another big principle, which was about just trying to bring out the beautiful in the ordinary, which I think is kind of cool. That, like, if you look at anything with enough interest, you can find it fascinating. You can find so many details. Like, if you go outside and dig a hole in the ground, you can find 1,000 things in there that are cool, that are fascinating, and that you can just really focus on. And that's something that we wanted to kind of get across in the game as well, that like everything is beautiful. It doesn't have to be fantasy and explosions and drama. It can just be the ordinary, normal world, because that's beautiful too if you just like look at it the right way. And then there was another aspect of this as well that I enjoyed, and that it was very nice to do. And I think we had such a history of just slaving away at games and being busy, and not really enjoying what we did. So now it's like, let's go on a field trip and let's just do pleasant things and have fun together. And that was a big thing for me, that I wanted everyone that worked on this game to really love what they did. Not just within the team, but also like the outsourcing, like the music and the cinematics that we made. That like you have to get it and embrace it and love it. Otherwise, it's not going to be the same thing. This has to feel like a labor of love. And I think that we actually did manage to make it pretty lovely. The downside is that when you love something so much, you work too hard on it. Like, no one forced us to do it, but we forced ourselves to do it. And that's actually kind of the kind of crunch that can be the most dangerous, because it's not forced upon you. You just want so much to deliver the best thing you possibly can that you end up hurting yourself in the process. And like, if I could redo this, I would definitely want to have more time, not to deliver a different game, but just to break people a little bit less. That's like always a problem, just managing the level of effort you put into things. But also when you know that you have something that's special, it's kind of like you feel that like this is our shot. Like, we really have to do it now. And yesterday I was explaining to someone, like, you toss the ball up and you're about to knock it away, and you feel like if you don't do it, it's going to fall on the ground and you're going to miss that shot. So it's a dangerous place to be in, and you really have to be good at managing your team and your production. Because it is hard to make any game, but it's extremely hard to make a game that you care about this much. And this journey had a lot of ups and downs, but I'm extremely proud of what it turned out to be. I was just playing it the other day. My partner was saying, like, why can't I play the game? I want to play it. It's my turn now. So we played through the whole thing together, and it was like really fun to see it now, a couple of years later, when you have some distance to it and some perspective, and can actually see all these things that worked. And that's pretty sweet. We have a thing that we say at Coldwood, which we probably shouldn't say because I don't think it's necessarily a very good attitude, but a lot of times when we've done something that looks good, we say, wow, that looks just like a real game. As if we'd been doing this for 18 years and not making real games. But yeah, Unravel actually looks like a real game. And then this moment, I guess I have to bring it up because it's when people talk about Unravel, they often start with the E3 moment when I got to reveal it on stage at EA's show. And you know, being the nervous yarn person that talked about love in the middle of a presentation full of explosions and spaceships and zombies. But the thing is, it actually didn't have anything to do with nerves at all. It had everything to do with being extremely happy to be there and extremely happy that you finally get to share your little gift with the world. Because at the risk of sounding a little bit arrogant, I knew it was really good. Like, I knew that it was awesome. And I had, for a lot of reasons that are completely unrelated to game development, a pretty shit year up until then. I had an absolutely horrible year personally. So this was like my shining star on the horizon. Like, when I get to this moment, this is going to be awesome because I know it's going to be good. So when I was about to go up there, I know in the green room someone asked me, like, are you nervous? Do you just want to get it done? And I said, absolutely not. I could stay up there all day if you just let me, because I'm so looking forward to this. And it was wild. It's one of those things, like, I knew the game was good, but even though you knew that, there is absolutely no way you can prepare yourself for what it feels like when the world suddenly loves you. They have these people called conversation managers at EA who have these very advanced tools to just track everything that's being said about every game, so that every game gets a score. That's like, they track everything that people say in forums and on Twitter and all over the place, and they just give it a positive or negative sentiment, so they know what sort of the internet's opinion of their things is. And the evening after the presentation, we were sitting in the lobby of the hotel making yarnies before a little photo shoot that we're going to have, and the conversation managers were just running around shouting to each other, there's 0% negative sentiment. That has never ever happened before. You've made the entire internet nice for one day. Not a bad thing was said. And that was kind of cool. And very overwhelming, but also awesome. And I can recommend it. Like, if you're feeling a bit low, then just make something that millions of people love. That's a very good way to feel better about yourself. It takes some doing, but it's kind of cool. And then did a whole lot of travel to promote the game, which is also like, game development is such a weird journey. And sometimes quite literally too. And one thing that I always found surprising, but also incredibly satisfying, is that when we wrote the story for Unravel, like, I had this idea that it was supposed to be personal and universal. Like, it's deeply personal, but also kind of like fuzzy enough that you can make it yours, no matter who you are or where you're from. And that's something that actually worked a lot better than I thought it would. Like, I've heard people from all kinds of parts of the world who talk about how much the story resonated with them. Like, we have these themes of like, I'm from the north of Sweden, which is kind of colonized in a way. So you have like mining companies coming in and prospecting and basically just digging holes in the ground and taking off with the wealth and just leaving trash and toxic waste behind them and stuff like that. Which, now, I was writing about it from a small town in northern Sweden, that perspective, but then you hear from someone in China saying like, oh yeah, this applies to me times 10. And that was kind of cool to just see that stories can be personal and universal at the same time. And it went really well. Like, the whole thing went super well, and we're really happy with it. And I think that we can't take credit for it, of course, because we were just a small part of it. But it is kind of cool that EA's Originals program, where they publish smaller developers' games, was kind of inspired by this, because it felt like it went down so well and they were so happy with it. So they're just like, let's make more of this. This is a lot of fun. And I think that's cool that we've managed to sort of expand the horizons of what's possible to do within games. It's kind of awesome. But if you really boil it down to its essence, I guess what I most of all wanted to do was to make a game that my kids would be proud of. And it just turns out that a lot of other people liked it. And I'm very happy and very grateful for that. And that was all I was going to say about that. So thank you.
Wow, thanks a lot, Martin. Yeah, I have a lot of questions for you, but I'm saving them actually for the panel. Maybe just one quick one. Do you know how many Yarnies you have made to date over the years?
I don't. It's not that many. I'm more of a coach, but like maybe 5.
Okay.
So yeah. not that many. But I can say that the second Yarny I made has literally been around the world. I brought this Yarny from this exhibition is, I don't know, I guess it could be a little bit dangerous because I just made it from rusty wire that I found. So I made a second one that's a bit safer because it's nicer wires. And that one has gone all around the world. It's kind of cool.
Thanks, Martin.
Thank you.
Okay, so we come back to you on the panel later, and that's also true for everybody in the room and watching us online. That write down your questions, keep them in mind. You'll get a chance to ask them.